catch her looking at her Fitbit.
Oh, yeah.
And she reaches 10,000 steps, and then there goes the cheer.
One of the really interesting things, Swedish scientists took a bunch of volunteers, I think they were all men, and made them exercise.
All hunky men.
What?
All hunky men.
Yeah, very cute guys, and put them in the lab and had them exercise several times a week for several months, only using one leg. One leg got exercised, one leg did not. And the DNA methylation pattern was totally different in the exercise leg versus the non-exercise leg. In 1953, the guy on the left, Jeremy Morris, he's a British epidemiologist, and he decided to study London bus drivers and London conductors, you know, the double-decker buses that they have. And he studied them for a period of time and found that the conductors had far superior cardiac health and better overall mortality. I mean, less risk of overall mortality than the drivers who sat all day. But it lowers the risk of heart disease and some cancers. It helps prevent diabetes. It improves brain functions. And the two favorite chapters in my book have to do with the brain, and we'll talk about that in a minute. It spurs hormones that dampen chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation is one of the bad things that lead to a lot of other diseases. The idea among demographers is to square the curve, keep the health span going, the healthy part of life going, and then drop dead without without a long, slow, miserable. One of the reasons exercise has such a big effect on overall mortality is because it's so good for your heart. This is another one of my favorite researchers from way back. Aimin Lee, she's at Harvard, and she says what is obvious but profound. Heart disease is the leading killer of Americans, and exercise is powerful because it can prevent the largest killer. I mean, it just totally makes sense. High-intensity interval training called the HIIT. And I didn't do that before. In fact, I dreaded doing it.
Are you going to sprint?
No, not a very good cardiac effect in just 10 or 20 minutes or even less. There's all sorts of protocols on the web and in my book for how to do it, but it's very effective. And you know, people have been able to show that even short amounts of back and forth, high intensity and low intensity really work. In general, they think of moderate intensity exercise as you can talk to somebody, but you can't sing. But when it's really intense, you can't talk. And you're definitely seriously out of breath, and your heart rate goes way out of breath. Yeah. One of the other things I mentioned as one of the hallmarks of aging is your mitochondria poop out. Mitochondria are little organelles, little baby organs inside our cells, and they produce energy. When you eat food and breathe oxygen, they create a molecule called ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, which is the energy molecule. This is what happens inside mitochondria. And again, Stephanie, I give thanks to for the animation. And the net result of all this is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And you make a lot of energy when you get more mitochondria. And what exercise does, and this is one of the coolest things I learned, exercise revs up the mitochondria. It actually mass produces mitochondria. But again, like that Swedish study, only in the muscles you use. Two chapters I like best in the book are about the brain. And this is a little watering can with BDNF. And John Rady, whose wonderful book, Spark, is terrific. And if you haven't gotten it, you should. He calls BDNF miracle grow for the brain. It's a chemical that the brain makes in response to exercise, and that chemical goes and acts on the brain, particularly in an area called the hippocampus, which is the memory center and also involved in mood. And BDNF, this brain-derived neurotrophic factor, literally increases the size of the hippocampus. And that means that exercise is good for cognition and also for mood. The same chemical, BDNF, is involved in both. And it now turns out that BDNF works with a chemical you probably have heard of called serotonin to boost mood. So here's a depressed guy, then he exercises in the sun, and it's